Some other heroes I've noticed with some other characters that I've noticed this with is with Iron Man, the Hulk, Superman, maybe Batman and Joker. Reason why how an inspiration of Hulk I see is sort of like just the inner rage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just that. The Hulk, you made a good point with the Hulk. The Hulk is a brilliant example. Is like Captain America. He wasn't like Captain America with Captain America being created mainly because of World War II. Hulk was the same way, but due to the Cold War against the communists. And basically, because back in the 50s, not only was it the age of nuclear weapons and communism and stuff, but basically it was the decade of social fears, economics, and paranoia. Government paranoia about how basically if we keep detonating these nuclear weapons, here's what we know about them. We know that radiation can kill you, but what about the effects that it does that we don't know about? That's why in the 50s there was such an resurgence of 50s sci-fi movies involving like giant ants, giant this, giant that, and the Hulk is one example of. Actually, no, wait, the Hulk was made in 1962, but it was still during the Cold War era, at the height of the Cold War era in the early 60s. But basically what I'm trying to get at is the Hulk was created mainly because actually, the Hulk that was part of it, but also Stan Lee, when he created the Hulk, he basically didn't create the Hulk just because of real life events involving the Cold War, and he basically created him because he was inspired by two movies that he liked when he was a kid, Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And if you if you look at the first issue that he appeared, basically it's like Frankenstein on steroids. Technically, because originally he was going to paint his color gray, but the printer had problem making the color consistent. On some pages he would be light gray, on some pages dark gray, on some pages even white. So he decided to change him green, and he didn't have any other characters that were green at the time. So he said, okay, I'll change him green, and that's how that happened. And he's had other heroes that have gone through appearances like that, like Daredevil, for example. He was originally yellow and black, or the yellow and brown in some variations. And then people start saying to Stan Lee, we don't like the yellow costume. Can you change it? And it's like, okay, how about red? Just as casual as that, He just changed his colors out of the blink of an eye,
Just to slightly off topic, like the Hulk originally being gray, I think he eventually becomes gray in like a Canon Wars, and is that supposed to be like a paid tribute to his original idea?
Later in the in later comics, like in the 2000s and the 90s, they turned him back to gray as like an homage to the original color scheme that Stan Lee had in mind, because mainly when Stan Lee saw Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, he basically wanted him to be gray originally because he was a monster and he was scary, and it basically, I think it also had something to do with Frankenstein, the original Boris Karloff version, which I've always been a big fan of. That movie, like I said, it's the Hulk, it's Frankenstein on steroids. There's no question about it, and all he really needs is just the bolts in his neck. And then like the little scars on his forehead and stuff. But other than that, Frank's on steroids. But yeah, there's other comics that came later in the 2000s that kind of pay tribute to that. Even though Hulk is green is the Hulk's prime color, I actually prefer the gray myself, because I've always been a gothic horror fan, and it reminds me so much of Frankenstein. And the way also that Jack Kirby draws that Hulk in the first issue is amazing. And plus, Jack Kirby's just a great artist in general, because he did all these other titles like X-Men and Avengers and Fantastic Four, New Gods for DC. He did a lot of Superman stuff. He's a great artist, one of my favorites.
Okay.
So, and now that we've explained the examples of this, should we go into other characters?